We've got 50 people in the room, so we'll do it live. We'll do it live. Hey, Lewis Browning's here. Johnny Knoxville, of course. Dan Boyd. Had a little conversation, as I mentioned. I saw a bald eagle circling overhead just a few minutes ago on my property. Dan Diem's in the house from Montrose, Michigan. Montrose, Michigan, not far from Flint, Michigan, sort of, a little north into the west. Devin Bound, Alan Sr., a lot of usual suspects in here, which is always good. Mark Miller, what's up? Alan Sr., Dan Boyd. Today, of course, is 420, but it's also Easter for those of you who observe. Have a happy Easter, my friends. Sometimes I listen to myself, bald eagles are cool. I've seen one in my life. We have them in Michigan. They're making a comeback. And now you occasionally see them in the Lower Peninsula. I remember when that was extremely rare, but now they're more common. But if you go to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, you almost can't avoid seeing one or two along the way, especially up along the shore of Lake Superior and so on. And the bald eagle nests can be huge. Andy, New York, 29 points. I think we have to 2 tons. 2 tons. And it's about, like I said, the size of a Volkswagen Bug, but stuck up in a tree. I've seen a few nests. They're huge. They're huge. Drewski, do it live. Do it live. Oh, boy. And Heather, the Canadian robot lady, will be here, but maybe just a little later on. Deanna's in the house. Happy Easter all. Thank you, Deanna. Christine Loveless, happy Easter. Isaiah, hey, from Lyons Muir. Okay, William Page, good afternoon from Odessa, Texas. Stanley Gustafson, 23rd wedding anniversary for us today. Back then, the 420 reference wasn't really mainstream. We didn't know how to avoid it. Greenville, Michigan. And, that's the kind of thing. How would you know? Who could suspect such a thing? That someday the abbreviation for your wedding anniversary would have such a connotation. But congratulations, my friends. Congratulations. Gilberto Avina wants to live dangerously and buy an RV from Hertz. I'm sorry, or rent an RV from Hertz, maybe. And then park it in your HOA and let us know how it goes so I can do like 15 videos about you. USA Badass. USA Badass. I was about to say Badass. Hello everyone from Pollock Pines, California. I just literally screwed up everything in your brief sentence there. And see, right now I've got 2 turkey vultures looping around outside, 3, and they've got a very distinctive angle the way their wings are when they're soaring. And the bald eagles were flatter. That's how I suspected something was up. So Elixir is a Michigan fan living in Columbus, which has got to be a nightmare. At least twice a year, right? Oh boy. Alethea, hey Steve. And is Alethea, am I saying that right? Please let me know. I need to know these things. If you've got a really strange name in how you have your thumbnail identified there, a pronouncer is appreciated. Carl's Corner, happy Easter, Steve. When I worked in radio, I'd be reading the news, and the Associated Press would put a pronouncer next to any name, including like ones you read every single day, just in case you didn't know how to say Vetus Garolitis or something. And then occasionally they'd have pronouncers that people would disagree with. But the Associated Press style guide is considered to be correct. So Made in America says more than 100 here haven't hit their gavel on the thumbs up. And hey, you called it out, not me. Daniel Moore, hello from a decently temperature to Indianapolis, Indiana. I've got one of those stupid headlines popping up in the corner. I've got 52 degrees where I'm at, which I know drives everyone crazy. Michael M. Steve, I really appreciated your video about Jed the Fish. I grew up in Southern California, listened to K-Rock for over 20 years, and can relate to everything you said. Thank you. I did a video about Jed the Fish. I put it up on the second channel I've got because it has nothing to do with the law. But Jed the Fish passed away, and if you said, Steve, name your favorite disc jockey of all time, disc jockey, a guy who played records, I'd probably go with Jed the Fish. He passed away, but he was the afternoon drive guy at KROQ Los Angeles for decades, and he was so unique and so interesting and such a good DJ. Never met the man, but he was absolutely astounding. Absolutely astounding. So check out my video about him if you haven't done so already. Dimebag Coins is already watching a different one of your videos. And what, I dragged you away to do a live stream with me? Thank you. Appreciate that. Alethea says you're pronouncing my name perfectly, although I may have just mispronounced it then. I'm trying to remember how I pronounced it previously. Johnny Knoxville says, tip the DJ people. It's a holidays. Do people tip the DJs? I never did a bar DJ gig or like a wedding DJ gig. I know people who did. And I had a couple people approach me and said, do you want to do a wedding DJ gig? And I'm like, no, not really. I hate the idea of having to play requests. Oh boy. Mrs. Teresa 1999 is in the house. Daniel Moore says, I grew up listening to B 105.7 morning show. My favorite jock in there was Bernie Egan. My second favorites were Eric Garnes, Scott Wheeler, and Delilah. I'm not familiar with any of those. Of course, I know Delilah. She's syndicated. She plays the mellow stuff at night and reads letters and emails. I'm guessing more emails these days. But Charlie Tuna, Jeff 1618 calls out. And by the way, Charlie Tuna is one of these guys. I've read stories about him and his life story. Was one of the old school DJs who made it out to California and then had a really long career, but at a bunch of different stations. But he's one of the guys who was just smooth. That guy was smooth. I mean, like that. You could listen to him talk. I mean, I'll tell you, one of the problems I have being a DJ is my vocal techniques aren't terribly smooth. And I'll occasionally stumble over words. And, if I stumble over a word in a video, it's no big deal. If I stumble over a word and I got a 12-second intro and I'm trying to hit the post, as they say, it can be a problem. So that's why I was never going to make it in the big leagues as a disc jockey. Jason Brindamauer, lots of bald eagles along the Huron River. I can't kayak without seeing them. Belleville till Gibraltar. And the Huron River, I believe, I assume it's the same Huron River that flows through the Ann Arbor area. And bald eagles are fishing birds. They spend a lot of time fishing. And you'll see them often perched in trees, just looking down at the water near a lake or a river. And believe it or not, I saw one up in a tree about 2 miles from my house. And I was like shocked, like, what's that bald eagle doing? And I realized, oh, there's a little pond. And it was a situation where a subdivision had a little pond, but the pond was real. The pond was actually, it flowed into it wasn't like a artificial pond they put there with the sprinklers and stuff. It was a real pond, and I didn't see him catch anything, but I'm sure he did. Manicantan R, first time I've caught you live. Well, I always enjoy seeing new people here, so thank you. Locked on Law, happy Ishtar to those who can still afford eggs. Oh boy. Oh, Devin Bond, Dr. Don Rose at KFRC in San Francisco. Louis Browning missed being high on the air in Cincinnati. I knew some DJs back in the old days, some of whom may have partaken. Is that the correct word? Partook while on the air. I remember back WABX when I was an intern there, and Alan Stagg, who has also passed, good friend of mine, though, nice guy. He was a chain smoker, and I suspect when he was off the air, he switched what he was smoking. So Kit Marlowe Scott says eagles are adaptable. They can also be scavengers. Oh, I'm sure they will be, but you're more likely to see turkey vultures nibbling on something by the side of the road. I don't think I've ever seen an eagle scavenging, but I'm sure they do. Stephen Nordstrom points out, raised on Gene Shepard. Gene Shepard was also a very fascinating air personality, but he was more the guy who told stories. Put your eye out, kid. Christmas Story is a Gene Shepard story, and he actually he narrates it. That's his voice narrating the movie. But he's not really a disc jockey in that sense. Disc jockey, I'm talking about a guy who's actually primarily playing records, and it's his job to entertain in the breaks. And it's a different art form. Don't get me wrong. Howard Stern, for instance, started out as a disc jockey, but what he does now is he only plays music to comment on it. He rarely plays full songs, but he's more of a talk show host now. So I would view Gene Shepard as more of a talk show host, even though it wasn't a call-in talk show. It was him talking. Weird car life with TC says, I'll take the hint at this point. Sorry, Steve, for fanning so hard. Yeesh. I have no idea what you're talking about. So I will now scroll backwards, which is going to cause all kinds of problems, and see if I can figure out what you're talking about. I don't see it. So I apologize. And let me tell you, and this is again, this is sort of a talk show here, right? When I read a question and I'm talking, I have a hard time reading other questions till I'm done talking. I can't multitask like I used to. So if I don't catch what you said and don't comment on it, wait a few minutes and try again. Don't cut and paste, because I had somebody doing that last week and it drove me crazy. But, wait a few minutes. So Thomas Hines says there are an estimated 70,000 nesting pairs of bald eagles, and it may have dropped to as low as 500 in the 1960s. Is that in the whole world or in the lower 48? Because I know that in Alaska, they've had decent numbers for quite some time. I remember being in Wisconsin in my canoe on Lake Superior and passing a point where there's all these trees along the shore. And I was like, I don't know, a quarter mile offshore in my canoe cruising along. And I look over and there's all these, must have been a dozen bald eagles just sitting there watching the water, waiting for me to get out of there so that if I got out of the way, they could come down and catch some stuff. Jason Brindamar, I caught a bald eagle on my dash cam last summer scavenging at the I-275 trash dump. you mean the landfill? Oh, boy. I am McNathan. Happy Easter, everyone, from Sun City Center, Florida. Thank you very much. Alethea doesn't say anything except posts some envelopes with hearts on them. And thank you very much. I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. David Melbourne says, it is hell getting older. Tell me about it. I'm sure you realize that in every video of mine you've seen, I was a little bit older than I was in the previous, right? If you're watching in order, I'm aging before your very eyes. But it's happening to all of us. Taekwondo guy, beautiful. Anyang Shimnika, my friend. What school of Taekwondo? Hanmukwan? Mudakwan? Tungsudo? Hapkido? Oh. Grande Tacos says Eagles made that song Hotel California. Irving Johnson says, yes, in Wisconsin by Lake Superior, the Eagles nest. They are plentiful. Mainly see them eating roadkill. So maybe, I know, they're opportunists, I guess we'd call that. If it's available, they'll do it. Daniel Moore's not seen any bald eagles near the White River in downtown Indy. The reason being, I think the river's so polluted, the eagles take their business elsewhere. I suspect they need to actually have good enough water that they have visibility. So the water's not clear and they can't see into it. They can't go fishing. Alethea, that's fan mail. Okay, well, I assume. Fatty McButterpants points out that the Eagles went away when AMC went out of business. Remember the AMC Eagle, which was like a glorified, not a gremlin, but AMC. Brian Bullington, Steve, just want to thank you for your channel and the information that you share. I want to thank you for watching. You understand, it's like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Would I exist if nobody was watching? See, I understand there's actually several different philosophical concepts there. But Padre, I'm not old. I'm just 29 with 31 years of experience. Yeah, it works out that way too. Sub GR77, I remember being a kid and going to a dump in the UP to watch the Bears feed. Was at Copper Harbor by any chance? Copper Harbor famously had a dump outside of town, which is now closed. And it was a known fact that you could go to the dump and watch the Bears, and they would show up right around the evening. And they would also tell visitors, by the way, you can watch them, but please stay back. Like, don't go up and see if you can get it to take an apple out of your mouth. iFix or free repair, Ralph Macchio doesn't age. That's largely true. He's got that Dick Clark thing going, which for many, many years, Dick Clark seemed to be about basically the same age. Master Porb, did you receive the old dictionary I sent you along with a few others? Yes, I did, my friend. I've actually, I almost swore. I actually had some things I put right here to mention on today's live stream, and then I moved them back over there, and they're right off of camera, right over there. I'll do it next week. I apologize. Lewis Browning says you could consider the AMC Eagle the gremlin of Subarus. There you go. Oh, boy. Okay. Oh, now I got this thing. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Stanley Snow Monkey, that's it. They were 4x4 AMC Hornets. I knew, I couldn't remember what the Hornet was. The AMC Hornet. There's the AMC Gremlin, the AMC Pacer, Matador, Marlin, and there was the Hornet. And it was a 4x4 Hornet, basically. Sub GR says, yes, that was in Copper Harbor. I can tell you where the dump was, but it's now fenced off. They no longer do that. Witness multi-chick. Yes, wax on, wax off. Wax on, wax off. And by the way, I loved The Karate Kid. The original movie, the remake was horrible, but I loved the original. However, the wax on, wax off thing would not have worked. Okay? Because although learning the repetitive motion would actually teach you to do this, you would need to learn to do that in response to things. So the only way the wax on, wax off would have worked is if Miyagi had stood in front of him and said, okay, wax on while I'm doing this, and then wax off while I'm doing this. And so, but again, it's a good movie. The message is good. I like the movie. Taekwondo guy, Mudokwan, I believe, or whatever most Taekwondo schools teach. See, that's the distinction. You got to know this because there's Hanmukwan, Mudokwan, Tung Sudo, and all of these Hapkido, and there's all these different ones. And in case you're curious, Taekwondo is the parent name for all of the martial arts, in essence, to come out of Korea that are similar with the punching and the kicking, because that's pretty much what Taekwondo mean, to punch and to kick. But then there's separate schools, and think of them like universities almost, where they teach these different, and they're very similar. In fact, many of the forms are the same for those of you who know what the patterns of the forms are. But there's a couple that are distinctively different. Hapkido, for instance, uses more judo-style stuff in it than Hanmukwan does. So, again, a discussion that me and Taekwondo guy can have that would interest almost no one else. Lewis Browning, the AMX. The AMX is pretty cool. That was the high-performance, one of the high-performance cars built by American Motors. Very, very cool. I like those. Dan Boyd says, don't forget there was the Hudson Hornet. The Hudson Hornet. Yes, and that was a name, and they used that back in the day. In fact, Hudson Hornet was a famous car they raced in NASCAR back when Hudson did that. So, Shaft. No, I've never driven an EV charger. I've heard about them, but I've never driven one. For running away. Wait, you saying I should not be trying to catch a fly with chopsticks? Oh no, you can. It will most likely teach you patience. Hapkido is fun. It's a CyberDoc. Yeah, I took Hapkido for a while, as well as the Taekwondo from the same instructor. And the problem, of course, with Hapkido is all the throwing. Believe it or not, it's fun to throw somebody else, but then you got to let them throw you. And if somebody throws you badly, is when you get hurt. You don't get hurt when you're throwing somebody else. You get hurt when you're being thrown badly, even on mats. So, witness multi-chicks, I'm getting older, so less hitting and kicking for me, more balance and stability. That's one of the things I tried to explain to kids who asked me, because I taught Taekwondo for a while. And parents, they say, why are we teaching our children to fight? And I go, you're not teaching them to fight. You're teaching them coordination, balance. You're teaching them discipline. You're teaching, and all you got to do is go watch a well-taught Taekwondo class, and you go, oh my gosh, these kids are so well-disciplined. And one of the things that I would often tell kids that I taught is, by the way, you understand this is all last resort stuff. Okay, you never walk up and throw the first punch. If someone tries to punch you, you block it. They try to punch you again, block it, and punch them back. But it's never first resort stuff. And the point is that if you are trained and in shape and know what's going on, when someone takes a punch at you, you are more able to avoid it or block it or get out of the way. And it's an extremely important skill, but the balance, just learning how to balance on 2 feet is something most people don't actually do very, very well. Prince Albert points out that Hudson Hornet eventually retired and went on to Radiator Springs. I'll admit I was very, very late to that movie. I did not see Cars when it came out, and I saw it later, and I'm like, that's actually pretty good, pretty good. Witness multi chick agrees with me. Totally agree. Total agreement, not just partial agreement. I love it when people go, I watched your video, and while I sort of agree with you, and then they, I'm like, well, oh boy. Stanley Snow Monkey 318 says Hudson Hornet was the last flathead engine to race in NASCAR. The old school of NASCAR, I'm talking about the late 40s, early 50s, were mind-blowingly different than what they are today. Mark Miller says after blocking, throttle them. Oh, Cyberdoc says your brain is your best self-defense. Your mouth is number 2. Your legs are number 3. Well, many martial arts instructors will tell you that if somebody comes at you, if you can run away, run away. No one's going to get hurt if you run away, right? Now, if someone starts chasing you, well, you may have to turn around and do something else. But Nate Fish says, don't forget that Chuck Norris can divide by 0 and speak Braille. I had not heard those two. Thank you. Oh. Johnny Quest says, hey, Steve, how are you this Easter Sunday? I'm fine. Thank you for asking. I just watched your video on the wheelchair-bound man arrested in College Park. Then, ironically, I saw the actual body cam of the incident. And body cam was quite shocking. I don't put body cam video into my videos. I talk about them. But the body cam footage of that is actually quite disturbing. And I'm so happy that body cams exist. Can you imagine if body cams and cell phones weren't around and people, you won't believe what this cop did to me? Yeah, right. Sure, whatever. So, Dimebag Coins, yeah, back when NASCAR was actually stock car. Yeah, it's no longer a stock car racing, is it? Nate Fish, de-escalation is core. Yes, ideally. Mark Miller, Run Away. That's a great song by Slade. That is a great song by Slade. Cyberdoc, Chuck Norris doesn't wear a watch because Chuck Norris tells time what it is. Reinhard, man, I'm slow. I'll just play dead. What's funny is possums actually do play dead. I don't know if you've ever actually witnessed a possum playing dead. Okay. And I had a house a few years back where the possum would occasionally wander by and taunt my dog Wolfie. And if Wolfie got outside and got up there, the possum would literally just lay on its back and do this. And I remember one time, and Wolfie wouldn't bite it. He'd just sit there and bark at it. I remember walking up there one time and I'm going, I didn't see the wolf, or I didn't see the possum fall over. I'm like, is this possum dead? So I picked Wolfie up, and then I nudged the possum with my foot, and he does one of these, and then he waddles off. And apparently they've discovered that over the millennia that they can occasionally do that, and whatever's chasing will just stop and go, oh, never mind. Who wants to eat that, you know? Oh, Fatty McButterpants, the flu gets a Chuck Norris shot every year. Hadn't heard that either. Oh. Matthew Shostrom, I've got a possum video from my college campus somewhere in my phone. Tom Tuttle says he wasn't dead. He's just pining for the fjords. Lovely plumage. Witness Multi-Chick says that's the freeze response in people. And some people do freeze up when they're nervous, when they're put on the spot, or presumably when something bad's about to happen. So S. Gutag says, good afternoon, checking in from Annapolis, Maryland. Fatima Butterbrands, Houston, we have a possum. Matthew Shostrom, which would you choose if a judge was making you choose? Weekends in jail for the next 5 years or one straight year in jail? I would take the weekends in jail so I get stuff done in between stints in jail. It would suck not having weekends. Oh. Dan Boyd, I had to install wooden skirting around the bottom of my mower storage box because possums kept dying under there. Are you sure they were dead or were they just playing possum? Because I'd have to ask myself, what's under there killing them all? You know, I mean, I haven't encountered that many dead possums in my life except on the roads where they actually got hit by cars. You know, so I picture Dan going on another dead possum, carrying it outside, and as soon as he turns around, it just gets up and runs away. Probably the same one. Ram 50 V8. What about those fainting goats? Goats are bizarre because they've got something in their heads that tells them to jump around like it's almost like a random number generator, but a random jump generator, you know? So Brian Ellis, I wonder if there's any disjointed vultures as a result of fighting a possum that isn't dead. I suspect a possum, when it's laying there half asleep dead and opens its eye and does this and realizes it's a vulture, probably gets up and runs because those vultures can be big. Kevin Oscar, since his brand new 2024 F-250, made it 46 miles before the engine light came on. Second week dealership can't get parts for starting Ford buyback. What state are you in? Because there's a famous case in Michigan. I've mentioned it many times. Ayer versus Ford Motor Company, Ayer. Ayer, you can look it up. And that's the fact pattern right there. Guy had a Ford truck, was driving it up north. Engine blew up on the road. Took it to a dealership someplace in the Tri-City area over here. They said, we can't get an engine for it. You got to wait. Last chance letter was sent. Last chance passed. And Wayne County Circuit Court said, buy that vehicle back. And Ford actually appealed that and said, well, we couldn't get parts. I know the attorney who had to make that argument. And he told me, he's like, my client wanted me to. So they took it up on appeal, and the appeals court says, there's an exception section in the statute that says these are the exceptions. There's a list. Lack of parts ain't one of them. So no. Now, if the lack of parts was caused by famine, strife, war, nuclear disaster, whatever's listed, it's all these biblical things, okay? If it's caused by that, then yes, but no, lack of parts by itself ain't going to do it. So there you go. G Keyman 565, have a happy Easter, Steve Lehto, and everyone else. Hey, G Keyman, I went to a flea market yesterday. It made me think of you, but it was the Dixieland up there in Pontiac. So I don't know if you've ever been there or not. So Kryptonic HD always reminds me of skateboards. What are you doing this weekend? I'm doing time. Witness Multi-Chick, raccoon families eating cat food is highly entertaining, but the neighbors don't like it. They also like puppy chow. And again, I know they like marshmallows, they like candy, but don't try not to feed them that stuff. I love raccoons. I've got raccoons in my property, and I'm fighting my own instinct where I want to go out and feed them and teach them that I'm their friend. Because the next thing I know, they're gonna be climbing all over me, and I'm gonna be the crazy guy on Instagram with, hey, here's a man with 85 raccoons on his, sitting on him right now. Prince Albert's Chuck Norris was bitten by a cobra while filming a movie. After 2 days of excruciating pain, the cobra died. D. Wood, what's the difference between force majeure and an act of God? Probably nothing. Force majeure being a Latin phrase that pretty much means something beyond our control, and an act of God in a legal sense, same thing. Like, in other words, if you were to claim act of God, like if that was actually in a contract, you wouldn't actually have to come into court and bring in a priest to declare it an act of God. Oh boy. Joe Sonnenfeld asks a question: would no parts because of the pandemic count as an exception? Yes, it would. I believe so. And most of the car companies actually made that argument during COVID because many dealerships couldn't get parts because the whole supply chain was screwed up. And I know that the car companies made the argument. I don't know if it ever got litigated. But I know that's an argument they made. Kryptonics says those Kryptonic skateboards were the best and worst of their category. Well, I'm talking about the wheels, just the wheels. Because Kryptonic was one of the first companies to put out those kind of durometer wheels. Yeah, we're discussing skateboard wheel durometer now. Ram 50 V8. I've got 4 outdoor cats that dine with a groundhog and a possum every evening. They've made peace because they know that the free food is coming. No need to fight amongst themselves. Cyberdoc, I love trash pandas. And of course, is a common nickname for the raccoon. Also, Rackety Coon will do too. For those of you who remember Pogo down in the Okefenokee swamp, might be before some of your times. Johnny Knoxville says, I have no use for ferrets, raccoons, possums, squirrels, mice, rats. They're all the same thing. Well, it depends on where they are. You know, I don't want them in my house. I lived in a house, this is years ago, but it was a rental. And one day I noticed evidence of mice, shall we say. Mice tend to leave evidence behind. And where'd that come from? So I start exploring, and I can't figure out where the mice are coming or going. And so I went on Amazon, and I found you can buy these humane mice traps. And it's a box, it's plastic, and it's got a one-way door on it that swings up. So a mouse comes in, the door will close behind it, the mouse can't get out. Then you just take it and you just dump the mouse out someplace. So I caught a bunch of mice, and I finally figured out where they're coming in from. And the reason I found them is I heard a noise indicating that my mouse trap had just been triggered by something, because you'd hear the door click. And I turned and looked, and another mouse was coming, and what it was underneath the sink, there were pipes that went down through the floor of the kitchen. And behind the sink was a hole in one of these pipes. Behind the pole, the pipe was a little hole. And the mice were coming up. So I got some of that stuff you fill holes in with, and I filled them in, and I took care of it that way. But when I opened the door, there were 2 mice trapped in this one trap designed to trap one mouse, because I put a piece of cracker in there with peanut butter on it. And that's like crack to a mouse. And they're both in there eating it. They didn't realize they were in a trap, so I picked the trap up. And I'd take them down the street. There's a park. I'd let them go. I'm sure they're back in the house 5 minutes later, but like I said, mice are cool. As long as they're outside the house. I have them on my property. I've got field mice, or meadow voles is what they're actually called. So Alethea says, we don't have raccoons here, referring to, I guess, the UK. Yeah, raccoons are a North American thing, although they have been exported, much to the chagrin of Japan. Apparently, the children's book Rascal, which if you've not read it, it's a wonderful children's book. The Rascal was I think the book came out in the 30s or 40s, but it was set during World War I, and a young boy befriends a raccoon on his property, and he calls the raccoon Rascal. And it's a great book. And apparently the book was translated into other languages, including Japanese. And the book was a huge bestseller in Japan. I've heard this is true. It probably is. And somebody said, those animals look so cute, we should bring some over here. And now, of course, they've overrun the country. And so then what do you do? Because, I mean, they're cute. Dan Boyd, expanding foam. Yes, that's what I use. You buy it in a can at Home Depot. Makes the same sound as whipped cream, but do not spray it up your nose. Oh, D Wood had a dachshund that was a great mouser. Uh, my brother had dachshunds for years and years and years and years and years. But I can tell you right now that Milo and Wolfie just pretended they didn't know the mice were around. What mouse? What are you talking about? Mouse. Oh, Justin Knowlton says I can bring my raccoons to the UK. They'll love me for it. Witness multi-chick. My cats will sometimes bring gophers to the yard. It's fun for them to hunt. Oh. Gabagool. Oh, gabagool. Fun fact, the raccoon was not known to Spanish explorers, thus the word for raccoon in Spanish is actually an Aztec word, which I probably couldn't pronounce. I'm pretty sure the word raccoon, though, as used by us, is a derivative of a Native American language word, because obviously they knew about the raccoons. So, Fam P, do you have any stock advice? You mean to buy and sell stock? Oh, the last few people I gave stock advice to are mad at me, so I can't do that. But I will tell you, I've got in my portfolio, because I do own some stock. I own some Nokia stock, which is the Finnish phone company. I bought it really, really cheap, and it's gone up since then. Brianna CC, what is Angelina Jolie's signature body feature? That's a tough call. I know that she's been in movies where she's displayed her abs, but I don't know if anybody agrees with me on that. I don't know. So, Mark Miller says buy low, sell high. That'll do it. That'll do it. Beata Graf of Delhagen Raccoons. Good morning. Oh boy. Nate Fish, what about GameStop stock? And see, that's the problem is once you start getting into a situation where people are buying and selling based on like Instagram tips, you can't get ahead of that. You can't. And so I like to go with Warren Buffett's advice, and that is he goes, pick a company that makes a product that you understand. And if they make money and they make a product you understand, just buy it and hold on to it. But I'm sure that he probably thinks about it a little more deeply than that. But I saw somebody ask him that. Dash Cam Van, I'd love to see your car collection. It's 2 cars. Well, I mean, I'm assuming you mean the nice cars. I've actually got 5 cars. You can call me a Steve 5 cars Lehto if you want. But I've got 2 cars that are non-daily drivers. One is a Viper, one is a Cobra replica made by Backdraft. And I've gotten them both out this year. I got the Cobra out about a week ago. Little chilly, but I got it out. And then I got the Viper out a few days before that. It was very, very cold, but I did manage to get it out. And yes, I'm scrolling right now through my phone looking for the photograph I have where they're both in the same frame, i.e. inside my garage. And so this is going to be the best I can do for you, my friend. But right now, that is my, hang on. So hard to do this. That's my Backdraft Cobra in the back and my 1999 Dodge Viper in the front. So there you go. That's my car collection. Now, I assume you may actually mean you'd like to see more like videos or something, which I'll get to. And then I'll also do a video about the Jeep. I've got a 98 Jeep Wrangler, my good friend JP in South Carolina located for me, and he cleaned it up for me. And so I've been driving it as a not complete daily driver, but I drive it almost every day. But I've but just zipping around town. Brianna CC, would you ever purchase a Ford GT? No. Believe it or not, my good friend Mark Lieberman's got one, but they're so expensive and they're just a little out of my price range. Number one, and I don't know, I'd feel uncomfortable driving a car that expensive on the road, but I understand there's no bright line on that. Dash cam van, beautiful cars. Thank you. I appreciate that. Fatty McButterpants, Steve's Indian name, Chief 5 Cars. Witness multi-chick, those cars will be obsolete soon. Hold on to them. Obsolete? You mean like people won't be using cars anymore? Oh boy. Ram 50 V8, is that the garage groundhog camera? No. I just took that picture with one of these cameras. The don't get me going on that groundhog. Bob A. Bong. Hi, Steve. Happy 420. Any connection? Oh boy. Freaking awesome. Happy Easter, Steve. I liked and shared the live stream on my community page. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Cheeky Monkey says, buy a tank. They're going cheap. I got 3. Army tanks? I know Jay Leno recently got an army tank, and he's also got an armored car, a Ferret. But, Keep on Trucking loves the V12. I haven't got a V12 yet. I got a V10 and I got a V8. Midas Claw. Would you buy a classic Batmobile? I love the Batmobile. It's one of the coolest custom cars, one of the coolest TV cars. I'm talking about the original Batmobile, not one of the later movie ones. I don't know if I'd buy one to drive it around, though. But, I mean, they're very cool. But, I talked to the guy at Fiberglass Freaks who builds them. And, the guy's an artist. Absolutely amazing. JJ, didn't you buy Ford at $5? I've never owned stock in the car companies. No. Witness Multi-Chick says, yep, that's what I'm saying. Obsolete. People will stop driving cars. I'm not sure about that. But Padres says that Viper is already an antique. Well, so is my Jeep Wrangler, I guess, right? But it depends on your definition of antique. But I understand for an antique license plate, it might qualify in some places. Kit Marlowe Scott says, I think the record of a possum's life in captivity is 4 years. Oh, I'd have to imagine they live longer than that. Joe Pangea, 3:10 a.m. tomorrow here in Australia. Good night, all. Wait, can't you tell us what's going to happen tomorrow? Mexican Spec. Good morning. Good morning, MS. And yeah, it's an old joke. It's an old joke, but Johnny Knoxville, the VW VR6 and the 2.0 liter are 2 of their best engines. I remember when I was in high school and you still did cubic inches. A 350 was considered small. I mean, after all, it's a small block. And I had a 383 in my car. I had a 1969 Dodge Charger with a 383. And I felt bad because it wasn't a 440. I mean, I had the smaller of the engines, And then when they went to liters, people go, I got a 5-point. Your 5-point is a 3.0 something, right? Smaller than a 350. Like I just thought, they're doing that because people in America don't understand metric. Mexican Spec says, hey, I'm not late. Steve started early. It's one way to look at it. Johnny Knoxville, Holly Carbs. Yeah, don't forget the Holly Carbs. Holly Carbs, Krager Mags, Hush Thrush Mufflers. We did this a couple weeks ago. Time's ticking says a 383 would have had a faster quarter mile in the 440. The 440, here's the thing. I remember people telling me the 383 is better than a 440 because the 383 is lighter. And so, there's always questions about how efficient the engine is and so on. But the whole thing is that's a moot point because you'd rather have the 426. Carl's Corner, I was just on a back road and I saw an old Willis Jeep for sale. I saw somebody selling an old Willis Jeep here in Michigan, not far from me, on Facebook Marketplace, which means that either the whole ad was fake or it was a real photograph of a Jeep that's not for sale or, so what are you going to do? Mark Miller, the Krakow stereo. No, it's the Pioneer Super Tuner. The Pioneer Super Tuner. Art S. All Packard V12s are great. I've seen a lot of those cars. What I always get blown away by is the fact that they had like supercharged V12s in the 1940s. Because we think of superchargers as modern. Yeah, they were using them in World War II. What? Oh, Johnny Knoxville. I need an air-cooled Porsche, flat six. I still use cubic inches as Fatty McButterpants because freedom isn't divisible by 10. Yeah, no, it'd be divisible by 12, I'm guessing. Andrew Kuchowski says that all comes down to the operator skill, the transmission, the curb weight, and the tires. Ram 50 V8 says there's only a few pounds difference between a 383 and a 440. Yeah, because I believe they both start with the same lower configuration. And the 440, I believe, and this is going to cause all kinds of arguments, I believe it simply has a higher deck. But I just said I believe because I want to put that into squirrely language that if somebody goes, hey, that's not correct, I'm like, okay, whatever. Gordon 861 says he bought a European car because it's nice to go around corners. You have to understand that to a kid growing up in Detroit in the 1960s or 70s, it was all about, I'm at a red light, the light just changed green, stomp on it. How fast can you get up to, a speed where you got to like actually back off a little bit? And don't get me wrong, I mean, my Viper can do that, but my Viper can also corner. So that's the cool thing. Bill Van Ram says my dad's undercover cop car was a 383 Super B. Well, don't forget that the police interceptor in Dirty Mary Crazy Larry had a 440 in it. And when asked how fast does it go, a man said, top end, unlimited. Top end, unlimited. So if it happened in a movie, it's true. But you'll also recall the same car wound up hitting a telephone pole. And when he called in to report that he was no longer involved in the high-speed chase, he had to say something. So he goes, the brakes faded on me. So it wasn't the engine. It was the brakes. But I believe it was a 440 that had a unlimited top end. So Art S's corners are overrated. Overrated. Cyberdox's Dirty Mary Crazy Larry ended in a train wreck. Yes, and the train wreck could be seen in the opening credits to The Fall Guy. We've talked about this before, too. Opening song over the credits of Dirty Mary Crazy Larry is a little-known song called Time is a Funny Thing by Susan Moen. Look it up. Maughan. I think that's the correct pronunciation. Time is a Funny Thing. Although the last time I recommended a song on here, I went and looked at the song a few days later, and people are going, who's here because of Steve Lehto recommending a song? Because he's got horrible musical taste. I'm not here to recommend songs. So if you actually are here to get my musical tastes, I apologize. Chad Crum, happy 420, Steve. That Jeff is late to the party from Knoxville. No one's ever late. If you made it here, you beat everyone who didn't. Alan Sr., you can't outrun that Motorola. Steve, I understand that the guys on Mythbusters actually disproved that you can outrun a cop radio. You can. Oh, boy. Mexican Spec, I drove a 1963 Fury to high school with a 361. A 361. I never thought my engine was too small. Oh, no. It's never the driver or the owner who thinks that. It's when you're in the parking lot and somebody walked up and goes, hey, pop, let me see your engine. And you pop the hood and you go, that's a 383. And the guy goes, oh, I got a 440. Well, now your engine is too small, okay? But Mike Lackner had a 63 Fairlane with a 221 V8. Pistons like this big. 221? Brianna CC, do you cook for yourself? Yes, I do. And also, I order those factor meals from time to time. So there, it's a microwave in 2 minutes. But yes, I do. Yes, I do feed myself. Yes, I do. JBO, if I've ever owned a CB radio, no. And I also do not do ham radio. Somebody else asked, and there's a lot of ham and radio stuff on my set, but that's simply because I am a guy who's into radio, and a lot of people in the audience are ham guys. And my brother, I had a brother, said that I had a brother who was into ham radios. He could do the Morse code thing, the old school stuff. So I can't do Morse code. Nate Fish, are radar detector jammers illegal in Michigan? I have to imagine they are, because I believe they would say that you're interfering with somebody. If a police officer is using a radar gun and you're jamming that, I believe they would be, but I have not looked that up. Dan Boyd says 221 became the 260, which became the 289, and then the 302. And I assume that's because they're gradually making the bore larger. Burl Osborne, shut up and rock. When are you coming back to Geneva? Okay, I have to point this out to you, that I'm currently using their mouse pad as the microphone base, because it takes out some of the vibration when I tap the desk. But I have that on my desk at all times. Devin Bounces got in the commercial. Well, there's no link here, so it doesn't do any good. Pa Rump Mike, ever listen to Art Bell? Back in the day, once or twice. Cyberdoc 101.7. WLLW, the wall. Greg Hansen can still do Morse code. I have a question, and the Canadian robot lady asked this not so long ago. She asked, rhetorically speaking, I think, if you know Morse code, would tap dancing drive you crazy? And by the way, Mrs. Teresa 1999 is also in Geneva, New York, so you guys could compare notes. Mark Miller, tap the desk. No, not tapping, but just you know, if I put my watch down or something, and you know, I do occasionally move my hands or put my elbow down. So anything I can do to deaden the noise. You may notice it's not terribly visible on this camera. Wait, hang on. I'm gonna break my own rules here. See that? You can barely see it, but okay, I got to put that back now. But there is a shock mount on that microphone. The microphone is suspended by these rubber shock mounts, so that if you bump anything outside of the microphone, chances are the vibration won't make it to the microphone. But if I tap this, you might be able to hear that. Or if I tap the base, you'll hear, because there's no shock mount. That's all. John Michael Karma still has his WABX decoder ring. I've got one somewhere. They're not terribly practical, though. They're kind of large. But Art S likes Art Bell's first name for obvious reasons. Witness Multi-Chick says, don't break your own rules. But you can, because who's going to get you in trouble for it, right? Wait, did I move this microphone in the wrong direction? Hang on. It needs to go that way, right? A little bit. Hang on. It throws me off, and then pretty soon I start leaning. My mic is off. Oh, boy. Alethea says, I've not had a car at all for around 10 years now. Public transport, the tube, the rails. People don't understand, who've grown up in America, that in England, you don't need to own a car. You can get around. Padre, what color is the cup today? I did show it on camera once. It is a green hefty cup. It is a green hefty cup. Oh. That Jeff says, my current ride is a 2020 Bolt. Folks complain about EVs, but I've literally given myself vertigo by jumping off from a stop. Bolted so quickly. Okay. Yeah, no, the acceleration in electric cars is unbelievable. Oh, Alethea says I was being driven. I like being driven. Being chauffeured around. Mrs. Teresa says that she votes that I come for a cruising night this year in July and to bring my Viper. I actually did note it on my calendar, I believe. Hang on. Thought I did. Is it in July? I could have sworn I did that. But I will take a look at that. Mike Lackner once knew a redheaded young lady that tap danced while playing the fiddle. She very much intrigued young me. Oh, boy. Joe Sonnenfeld says no public transportation where I live. Well, in the U.S., public transportation is a very different thing. Very different thing than what it is in Europe, for instance. Devin Bound, bring the rolls around, Jeeves. And the Canadian Robot Lady has checked in. Good morning, chat. Besties, happy Easter. Canadian Robot Lady is in the house. She is, in fact, Heather, the voice at the beginning and end of every video on my main channel. And I referred people to an earlier video I did back in season 5, which would be 5 years ago, because that's how my seasons work. And in the video, she's not there, much like the Zombies song. And I believe she did join me later that same year, though. So is this is this my imagination, or is this mic not centered perfectly? I need to have the grid placed on the screen here so I can see exactly whether I'm centered or not. It's driving me crazy. So Melanie Salisbury says a 1998 red Corvette named Miss Kitty. Vroom. MHO8 says takes me 20 minutes to drive to work, an hour 45 on transit, plus it's just in gas cheaper. I actually had a meeting with one of my publishers, and the publisher's in Chicago. And the publishers, can we meet on this particular day? I said, sure. And so I did some research, and I realized that the train that used to run from the end of my street in Birmingham, Michigan, runs to Chicago, and it still runs. And so I actually looked it up, and I bought tickets, and I took the train from Birmingham to Chicago. And Birmingham, Michigan, it's a suburb of Detroit. Now, here's the thing. I could have gotten there a tiny bit faster by driving, tiny bit. And the train makes stops along the way. But that's going to happen. But meanwhile, there's restrooms, and you get up and walk around, and they have a car where you can go buy snacks and stuff. And I did that. And then when I was done with the meeting, I walked back to the train station, jumped back in the train, and took the train home. And I remember when there was a train that ran from Birmingham to Detroit, and enough people rode it to where you'd see people in the morning walking to the train station and then walking back. But over the years, so many businesses that people were working at downtown Detroit left Detroit. And so that ridership dropped to where they finally got rid of that, the large number of commuter trains they were running. So Alexander Ganaka, I took Amtrak, and that's what I'm talking about here. So Mad Michael says Steve's trying to get self-centered, but is struggling. Oh. Now, Elathea does have a driving license. So she borrows or rents if she really needs a car, which isn't very often, seeing as I like being driven around. Mexican Spec says it's not always driving. Sometimes it's parking is the problem. I forgot to mention, I've seen a couple shows lately, and I went and saw Gene Loves Jezebel in Ferndale a couple nights ago. And a fabulous show. If you don't know Gene Loves Jezebel, they're very, very good. And K-Rock used to play them quite a bit. And I went and saw them, and Balooey Sum was the warm-up act. He's a singer with the odd name Balooey Sum, and that's the stage name. It's not his real name. But I had to find a parking place, which was not trouble. But previously, at the exact same venue, I saw the English Beat a year earlier and had to park like blocks and blocks and blocks away and hike it, which was a pain because it was cold out. But I went and saw Justin Furstenfeld, who's the lead singer of Blue October, and he has an acoustic thing he does, and went and saw him do a show in Pontiac. And it was one of the last cold nights of the year, and I found free parking, which was about 3 blocks away, and it was so cold. It was insane. So, but it was a great show. Also a great show. Pyramid 7 says jealous. Jealous. Of course, he's calling out a song by Gene Loves Jezebel. Dimebag Coin says the only thing worse than an unsymmetrical shot is bad audio. I could tell people I'm trying to do the rule of thirds. I'm just not over enough. Oh, Chris Pott, I'm usually watching you from Portland. I'm in London now, 7 o'clock here. I'm doing the math, and I believe that does, in fact, check out. I was in London last November. Had a lot of fun there. Alethea says, I like to rent from Hertz. Okay, so obviously you're not a regular viewer. Oh. Jay Allen rode from Detroit to Chicago, all industrial areas, but switched trains to go west, and the scenery was amazing through the rest of Illinois and Wisconsin. I know people have taken the train all the way across America, and they say it's great, especially when you get out west. But I know the train from Detroit hit all the obvious places, going down, Birmingham, Royal Oak, Detroit, Dearborn, and along the way, it's like, all of the, like Battle Creek, Kalamazoo, or whatever, or places near that, so, Kit Marlowe, Scott too says, I think trees are going to be smarter than Hertz's AI. I had a lot of people questioning that, and I'm just saying, look, we know that AI can do great things. Okay, it can do great things, but we also know it can screw up occasionally. So when Hertz gets involved with AI, which way do you think it's going to go? Time's ticking says taking a train over distance is a great way to decompress and relax, especially if you like reading. And that's what I did. I brought a book. I probably brought one of my own books. No, brought a book. By the way, somebody contacted me recently and said, hey, Steve, someone told us you like to do talks about your books. And I said, yeah, I do. They said, are you available to give a talk about your book, about the Italian Hall disaster in Roseville this fall? I said, absolutely. So if anybody's within a decent distance of southeastern Michigan, you want some guy to show up and talk about the Italian Hall disaster, Douglas Houghton, the Tucker automobile and its story, or the Chrysler turbine car, look me up, and I do talks like that all the time. So, yeah, Lewis Browning says, don't forget how good AI is when it comes to writing legal briefs. Somebody wrote an article and said, if I was in the legal field, I'd be very concerned about my job because AI is the first people to be replaced by AI, lawyers. And somebody asked me about that, and they said, Steve, what do you think about that? And I said, no. I've seen the work they do. No. Now, I don't know, 20 years from now, maybe. But I might slow down a little bit 20 years from now. Padre, how much do you charge to speak? Nothing. You get me an audience, I'll speak. Speaking ain't hard. Practicing law is harder. Theodore Becker, who's your favorite poet? Your favorite poet? I'm not a big poetry reader. I can think of poems I like, but there's no one. Oh my gosh, this one poet really does it for me. So, yeah, Grande Tacos' AI is really good at legal fiction. Its hallucinations get it in trouble. MHOA says I'm starting an anti-social media platform, but will it be a social media platform that's anti-social media? I mean, that's very meta of you. Art S says there's a lawyer in Las Vegas that has his own antique full-size steam engine. Is it a steam car or just a steam engine, like a stationary steam engine? Jay Leno's got a stationary steam engine. I think he's got more than one, but he's got one that actually he runs it in his garage. It's just a huge thing. Dan Boyd, am I hallucinating? Mr. Hand. Mr. Hand. Theodore Becker, I thought you would have said Robert Frost for sure. I'm familiar with him, but walls and roads diverging and so on. Johnny Knoxville says anti-social social club. And the first rule is we don't socialize. Have you seen any good movies lately? I'm always soliciting recommendations. Robert Dillon. Nothing new. Nothing new that I can think of. But I can tell you that I've been reading a lot of good books lately. I'll do another book report. I do book reports on my second channel also. And I'm just now finishing up a book on the House of Morgan, the whole story of J.P. Morgan and his father and his descendants and the banking business they ran. Fascinating. I'm fascinated by legal histories as well as economic histories. And that, of course, ties in really, really well with American history, which I like as well. So. That Jeff says he might have meant a steam locomotive. There's a wealthy dude around here who bought a whole train and does rides on it. Really? That's pretty cool. Although, trains don't have the free will of an automobile with respect to where they can go. Johnny Knoxville, I watched the Petty documentary a few weeks ago. That was good. Tom Petty or Richard Petty? John Zabelak says, don't forget about the dead poets. The dead poets. Yeah, they had a society. Theodore Becker, I like book reports. Ella Theus is exactly, Steve. The UK is tiny, and I was living in central London. Brianna CC says you should charge $10,000 for speaking engagements. No one would show up. No one would pay me that. Oh, boy. Theodore Becker, have you read The Angle of Repose? I don't know what that is. Sorry. Johnny Knoxville says Richard Petty. Okay, yeah. That'd be a very different documentary as Tom Petty. I wonder if they're related. Oh, I've not seen that. But I know Richard's story very, very well. I wrote, obviously, about the winged cars, and he was a good friend of Bobby Isaac's. And I got to interview Richard Petty back in like 2013 or 14. No. It was 2015. I interviewed Richard Petty at Level Cross. Nice guy. And either before or after the interview, I said to him, it was on camera. I said, I was good. I wrote a book about Bobby Isaac, but I never met him because he passed in 1977. And Richard Petty goes, oh, I knew Bobby well. We talked about Bobby Isaac for a little bit, but just a really, really genuinely nice guy. So, Cheese Pizza. Howdy, Steve and chat. Oh, boy. KC6NFV. I think Jay Leno's got a car he's going to give away. I think I saw a video on YouTube for charity or something. I know he's done that a few times, but I know he generally doesn't sell cars. The only cars that I know he's ever sold officially are the ones where he's done something with an auction for charity and sold a car off. But his car collection is basically a one-way trip. Cars go in, they do not come out. Mrs. Teresa 1999 says half an hour from Geneva, New York. There's a steam patch in the middle of August of all different engines that are steam run. There's also one of those in Buckley, Michigan, south of Traverse City. They have a steam powered steam tractor kind of get together once a year. It's world known. There'll be guys with tractors, with stationary, with hit or miss, with just all kinds of stuff. And it's like the Buckley Steam Festival or something. If you look up Buckley, Buckley, Buckley and Steam, you'll find it. And I've been there many, many times. It's very, very cool. And you just got to see, the stuff they're coming up with 100 years ago. Dan Boyd, that rear engine Festiva. Mrs. Teresa says, Canon Canandaigua. I'm mispronouncing it. About 20 minutes. Oh. Kit Marlowe Scott says, I wonder if Jay Leno will be donating his car collection to any museums after he passes. He actually made a public announcement about a year ago. You can find it on the interwebs. If you type in Jay Leno car collection, and you'll find he actually talked about endowing the collection. So his collection will stay together. I don't even like to talk about that because it's in my mind, that's so far down the road. Why talk about it? You know, Hollywood Saint 57. Hey, Steve. Hey, Hollywood Saint 57. JR says we have a steam festival like that each year in Minnesota. How much you want to bet those same guys just go to different festivals? Because it's like the coolest thing ever. Oh. Cyberdoc says Leno saved money to pay for his own museum. Yeah, he's got a couple bucks. Andrew Kutrowski says he doesn't mind when the cars even light him on fire. He still rides them. And his motorbike collection. He actually has, I believe, almost as many motorcycles, if not more, than his cars. And it's just that the cars get more notice, but he rides all of them, and they're all street legal, and they're all plated and all that stuff. And I remember I was kind of shocked. I was always thinking cars, and I've been to his garage 3 times. And the first time he gave me a tour, I saw a couple motorcycles. I'd heard he liked motorcycles. And so I'm like, oh, cool. And he goes, well, come over here. So we walked over to the other section. It's another building. And opens the door, and it's just all these motorcycles lined up. And I'm like, how many motorcycles do you have? And he told me the number, but it was crazy. My brain didn't register it. It was so large. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's over 200 on each. But he loves his motorcycles. So I pity the fool. Do you have a favorite car collection you've seen? Yeah, Jay Leno's. Second would be the Stahl Museum. Although the Gilmore is up there also. The Gilmore Museum, it's over here in Michigan. It's kind of Kalamazoo, Battle Creekish, but north. It's the Gilmore. It's an amazing car collection. And of course, the Stahl Museum has got several hundred cars, but they're not all on display, but quite a few of them are. But like the Henry Ford Museum's got quite a few nice cars, but they don't have as many on display as they could because they're showing all kinds of other stuff as well. So D Wood, as Jay Leno's collection exceeded the size of the Peterson collection. I forgot the numbers because I've seen the Peterson collection, both what's on display and in their vault. I know a guy there really, really well. I've been there a few times. Even wrote an article once about some cars in their collection. Their collection is fascinating. It's very, very cool. But if you go there, you're not going to be able to see the whole thing because a lot of it is not on display. A lot of museums are that way, by the way. Brianna CC, do you drink the recommended 64 ounces of water daily? Nah, probably not. I try to drink a bottle or 2 of water a day, but I don't religiously do it. That Jeff Leno plating all of his cars and motorcycles. Can you imagine just the cost of doing it? Yeah, he's got people who help him do stuff. I suspect that's like almost like a full-time job. Sean M, did he ever let you drive a steam-powered car? No, but he took me for a ride in one. I've ridden in the car that he was working on that he got burned. But I rode in the car years ago, and it's those steam cars are like Rube Goldberg devices to get them running. And there's a pilot you got to light, and you light the pilot, and then the pilot actually is what helps vaporize the fuel. It's crazy. He's also got some later like Doble steam cars that could get going much faster, but the steam car technology is just bizarre. But he's fascinated by that stuff. Witness multi-check. Oh wow, Steve, that's cool. You rode in the steam car. Yeah, he took me around the big block in it. Boyd the Goofball says, have you ever owned a Fox body Mustang? No, I have not. One of my life's goals is to see a McLaren F1 in person. Jay's got one. Yeah. He's for a car lover to get in and see Jay Leno's garage and spend some time there simply walking around, especially if he's walking with you, telling you stories and you're asking him questions. And I remember seeing the McLaren in there, and it's just one of the once in a lifetime cars that you may never ever see anywhere else, And he's got a Chrysler Turbine car, which we've talked about many, many times. He's got 3 or 4 Duesenbergs, which I've had to ride in one of those also. And it's just everything from these early cars. The white steam car, I think, is 1908. He's got an old electric car from that same era, to modern stuff, to everything in between. And it's not all the stuff you'd expect. He's got some other oddball stuff in there. And you're like, I mean, he just loves cars. And so he doesn't just, love the collector cars or love the investment cars or anything like that. Daniel Kester made it in, and good to see you, my friend. I was worried about you, but he's checking in. Says, hi, everyone. So, hey, Daniel Kester. Appreciate that. KC6NFV, what part of Michigan are you in? From the Howard City area. I grew up in the Birmingham area. I've got an office in Southfield, and I'm in southeastern Michigan. I often say Detroit, but I've never lived in Detroit proper. When I worked in radio, they would tell you that even though you are like broadcasting from Flint, Michigan, or Saginaw or Frankenmuth, you don't spend so much time calling out the little villages and so on. If you meet somebody, they go, where do you live? Unless they're from Michigan, I go Detroit area. But if they're in Michigan, I go, oh, Howard City. Okay, I got you. So, Mark Keppel's checking in from Buffalo, New York. I got good friends in Buffalo. Robert Dillon, how'd you manage to meet Jay Leno? Didn't I do a video about that? I think I did. Hang on. If I did, it would be on my backup channel, right? Hang on, let me check. Switch account, backup channel. Let's go to content, and let's search, and let's type that in and hit go. No? What? Did I put it on my main channel? It's actually on my backup channel. I put up a video entitled "The Joke Jay Told About Me." And wow, I put it up a couple years ago. Unfortunately, I can't do anything tricky here because of the way that but go to my backup channel. Which I believe is called Steve Lehto's second channel, and look up "The Joke Jay Told About Me." And I tell the whole story, but put it briefly. Years and years and years ago, there was I wrote a book called Death's Door about the Italian Hall disaster. And a local bookstore ran an ad in the Finnish American Reporter saying Christmas shopping ideas. And they said, makes a great Christmas gift, Death's Door. And somebody cut that out and mailed it to Jay as a headline segment. And Jay put it up on screen and said, hey, get this for grandma or something like that. I was on screen for like 3 seconds at most. And the next day, my phone exploded. I saw you on Jay Leno last night. And I'm like, I wasn't on Jay Leno last night. But by the time I got to work, I figured it out because people were saying, well, no, your book was on Jay Leno. And I found the segment. And by the way, it's on YouTube. I mean, the segment itself is, I've had several people send me the segment goes, hey, have you seen this? I'm like, yes, I've seen this. And my name is on screen for like 3 seconds as part of the cover of the book, I mean, it's literally, I'm watching a video taken from TV that's of the ad cut and posted to a piece of poster board. And so I took a manuscript I'd written about the Chrysler Turbine car, and I stuck it in with a copy of Death's Door that I gift wrapped, and I mailed it to him care of NBC. And I said, "Hey Jay, it does make a great Christmas gift. Here you go." And I said, "By the way, I wrote a book about the Chrysler Turbine car, which I know you're into cars." And he actually called me to thank me, and we just corresponded ever since then. So it worked out. Very, very nice guy. Very, very nice guy. So Ember Miss 69, what is the craziest story you feel you've ever done? You mean like a video of or in my life? Because I mean, I've got 2 or 3 stories I can't tell here. Oh boy. The favorite story that I ever told on camera was actually a video I did with Vin Wiki, Ed Bolian. I did a video there about how my brothers and I were riding our mountain bikes out in the woods, and we found a rolled over Jeep in a ditch. And we managed to get it out of the ditch by getting it running. And that's another story altogether. And the video did very well. So if you didn't know that, I've been on Ed Bolian's Vin Wiki channel a few times. I think 10 or 11 actually. And I'm going to be going down there pretty soon. Horse at halt. How does being a bar member and officer of the court compromise your ability to effectively help your clients in a case? Zero. Doesn't hurt it at all. My number one duty is to my client. And by the way, bar, you misspelled it. It's not capital A and nor capital R. It is a bar. It's a word, bar. It's not an acronym. So, J. Allen, I want to hear those 3 stories. Well, it's one of the stories involves 2 of them involve other people, and they wouldn't want me telling the story. Mike Lackner, would you add a Seinfeld-style puffy shirt to rotation? No, I don't want to wear a puffy shirt. Jerry didn't want to wear one either. Oh, boy. Ram 50 V8 says there's one story you promised to tell, but I think you're waiting for the statute of limitations to run out. That's sort of right. Hey, if you don't like my answer, don't ask the question. Jason Brindamar says, how do people in other states illustrate where they live in a state without using their hands? I remember when I was in California, I go, well, I live in, I live in Detroit and it's down here. People go, it's in your hand, which is kind of like What's Up, Tiger Lily with Woody Allen. I go, no, but Michigan is shaped like a hand. Lower Michigan is shaped like a hand. And people would go, what? And I'd show it to them. They go, oh, it is. And I'd say, yeah. So the easiest way we discuss it, we say, well, Detroit's over, Detroit's down here, Saginaw's over here, Traverse City's up here, that kind of thing. Oh, okay. First name, last name. Did you know you have a Wikipedia page? Yes. And it's not endorsed by me. It's wildly inaccurate, but I'm not gonna go there. Oh boy. Grande Taco says you're required by law to point at your hand if you live in Michigan. Well, when discussing where you live, the problem is the people in the Upper Peninsula, because they can go like this, and they go, this is the Keweenaw Peninsula, all right, right. And then so like Marquette's over here and Sault Ste. Marie's over here. So you can kind of do that like this, but no one does that. Oh boy. And Daniel, exactly right. Don't forget the Upper or Lower Peninsula. Oops, my pointer fell on something and puts me across my screen. Mark Miller says everything in Colorado is positionally referenced by the mountains. Is that the reference point you use? In southeastern Michigan, in Detroit, everything's mile roads. And the mile roads, the northern edge of Detroit is 8 Mile Road, as you may have heard from a song. And so then it goes 9, 10, 11. And the mile roads run up into the 20s. And so when you're discussing how far something is from Detroit, you often ask, what mile road? What mile road? And that's another one. So 15? Oh, 18? Okay, I know where that is. John Zablak says the UP is located to Lower Canada. Well, the UP is actually connected to Wisconsin. And that's another story altogether, which I wrote about in my book about Douglas Houghton. Kit Marlowe, Scott, too. The peninsula I live on doesn't even have a name, just a peninsula. Well, many people do actually point to the thumb of Michigan and say, well, that's also a peninsula. And then there's the Leelanau Peninsula. And then there's actually a smaller one here called the Old Mission Peninsula. So actually are the Garden Peninsula in the UP and the Keweenaw. So there are other peninsulas in Michigan. And in fact, in Michigan, if you see our like a state flag or the state seal, there's a big Latin phrase underneath it, which translates as, if you seek a pleasant peninsula, look about you. And because there's the upper peninsula, the lower peninsula, and then all the lesser peninsula I mentioned as well. Johnny Knoxville says, I'm going to write a book about my unconstitutional police detention in Escanaba over a 12-pack of hams. Escanaba is a town in the upper peninsula of Michigan, where I believe Johnny may have been stopped by the police who were staking out a parking lot at a Walmart, trying to catch people from Wisconsin who might be, buying beer. What else are you going to do? Oh boy. So Slarta Bart Fest is where I live. I'm sorry, but I just saw Slarta Bart Fest. I got to call that out because, of course, that's a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference. Yeah, Johnny Knoxville says, yeah, that's the story. I remember the story quite well, my friend. Oh, Sam as I am says used to use the mountains to the west when he's in Colorado, but unfortunately moved to Seattle and got mountains on both sides. Now he's all confused. Oh. Johnny Z. Bradley, if you trace your opened hand on a piece of paper, it looks like a turkey. I remember doing that when I was a little kid. And they go, oh, yeah, it's a turkey. These are the big feathers. By the way, I had a turkey on my roof yesterday. I heard a clattering up there that was not the sound of geese landing on the roof. And I'm like, what the? And I go outside and there's a turkey. But I went to take a picture and he flew away. Or she. I didn't get a good enough glance. So. The Ontonagon River is at the edge of the UP. It's a really beautiful kayak trip. We only saw 2 people in 10 hours, a boy and his dad fishing. Yeah, the Ontonagon River, I believe, is the same river that they dammed up at one point in time. But before they dammed it, that was the site of the Ontonagon Boulder, which was a very, very large chunk of float copper that people had heard about that was stuck out there. And then there's a whole story about how a guy went in and recovered it. And then the U.S. government seized it. And he was pulling the old finder's keeper kind of thing. Like, I'm the one who dragged it out of the woods. And they're like, yeah, but you had no right to drag it out of the woods. And like, wait, what? Yeah, who said it was yours? So anyway, it's at the Smithsonian right now. And if you want to go see it, I'm not sure if it's on display though. Daniel Kester says it's worse to have peacocks on your roof than turkeys. Well, I don't have peacocks around here, so. Justin Knowlton says turkeys can fly. Believe it or not, they can fly a little tiny bit. Just not. They don't glide really well. Oh boy. Hollywood Saint 57 says never drive across the border when you're going to Tijuana. Otherwise, you're better off parking in San Diego and walking across. Yeah, because they got less to search, right? Yeah, Prince Albert says basically is turkeys don't fly out of helicopters. It's probably from the prop wash. So, Padres the turkeys roost in trees. You know, I mentioned before, I heard a crazy amount of noise coming from the edge of my property one day, and I go over and look, and there's a bunch of turkeys up in a tree. And I took a picture of it and I posted on Facebook, and I wrote, "As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly." And I had several people going, they can fly. How do you think they got up there? Some people don't get jokes. Joe Manji says, love your videos. Keep it up. Well, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate that. And thank you for checking in. It's a name I don't recognize. I love seeing new people show up from time to time. KC6 NFE says, Steve, can you bring 1,000 lightning bugs or fireflies, as we sometimes call them, to California and let them go? I'd like to see how the tweakers act when they see them. You know, it's interesting. The thing about fireflies is they appear to have a life cycle. It's driven by water. So there's a period in the summertime. If it rains hard, fireflies appear shortly thereafter. So it has something to do with like when they come out and do their business. And but I remember, like, for instance, driving across America going to California. And it was the last week of June. And I remember going through Joplin, Missouri, late at night, and there were fireflies I mean, it lit up the road. It was crazy. It was crazy. I know there's some places like in the mountains, like in the Appalachian Mountains and so on, where they've got fireflies also in gigantic quantities. But we get them from time to time where I am too. So 69 Cornet 500 says, my German Shepherd makes my turkeys fly once in a while. You know, I had the 2 Shetland sheepdogs, Milo and Wolfie, and they would chase things, quite often rabbits or other dogs. They saw them. I always wondered how they never, as far as I know, ever saw face-to-face deer or turkeys. I've always wondered how they react if they'd seen deer. Because, of course, deer could just disappear, you know. But I'm not sure what they would have done with turkeys. I'm not. My concern is a turkey might not run. A turkey might actually turn around and fight. Yeah. And by the way, John Zablak says frozen turkeys drop like a stone. See, the frozen ones, you got to thaw them first. Oh boy. Cyberdoc got jumped by a flock of turkeys while carrying a wooden canoe on my head through the yoke straps. They were ruthless. Oh, yeah, that's the problem. Your hands are full. Like, you can't drop the canoe, right? Oh, boy. Cyberdoc, yes, lightning bugs. Mike Lackner, WKRP's Bailey was perfect. Yeah, you know, it's like the Marianne Ginger debate. It'll never be solved. But I was a Bailey fan as well. Oh, Justin Knowlton says turkeys are mean. I'm sure it just depends on how you approach them. Hey, Bob blah blah's in the house. Good to see you, my friend. Frozen turkeys are very good swimmers. TJW8T1. Love your videos. I've been watching since at least 2015. Thank you for all you do. Well, you've been watching since like day 2, right? Because I actually put up a 10-year anniversary video less than a year ago. So I literally put my first video up just a tad over 10 years ago now. I didn't put up a lot of videos in the first year. I put up like one a week, occasionally like one every 2 weeks. And then it was in like year 5 where I said, I'm going to try this and do it daily and see what happens. And look what happened. Vince Roberts is Marianne. Well, of course. I'm just kidding. You are allowed to make the decision on whether or not you're a Ginger or a Marianne fan. The same is true with the blonde and the brunette off of WKRP. Padre, the woman at the meat market, asks, do these turkeys get any bigger? No, ma'am, they're dead. Oh, Mark Miller, you're planning a party when you hit 600,000 subscribers. At the rate I'm going, probably next year. So I hate to plan a party that far in advance. Where am I at right now? Let's see. Well, I'm in the wrong channel now. Remember when I changed channels a second ago? Hang on. Switch back. 578,588. Yeah, it's going to be a while. It's going to be a while. You know, and there's no predicting these things. It goes up, down, up, down, up, down. Johnny Knoxville is just getting into his first cup of coffee. Dan Boyd says, I've gotten older. Lovey Howl is kind of hot. Funny how that works. Oh, Johnny Z. Bradley says Ginger's still around and she's the last survivor, so she actually does win. And in many respects, she does. Canadian Robot Lady says, what about your meet and greet? Yeah, well, we were talking about doing a meet and greet of some sort, especially when Coyote versus Acme comes out. And they're talking next year on that, though. But I will do something then, okay? I just don't know what, and I don't know where. And I won't be able to make everybody happy, but we'll try to pick someplace central, you know, like, I don't know, Pennsylvania or Ohio or something. And whatever I can do, you know, we'll put something together. We'll put something together, but that's a little ways off down the road. Somebody mentioned a turkey or a chicken cannon. D Wood. Yes. And for those who don't know, one of the biggest enemies of modern jet aircraft are birds. You might know that bird strikes, just ask Sully about bird strikes, are a very serious thing. And so they test jet engines in a test cell by firing birds into them. And just trust me, it is true. Josh Jogminas, hello, fellow Lehtoites. I've also accepted Lehto Ganders. David Artesian, hi, Steve. Hope you're having a great Easter. I am. Thank you. Johnny Knoxville says somewhere central like Gary, Indiana. I don't know why, but that would be perfect. What about Milwaukee, Johnny? I'll drag you back to Milwaukee. When I was a junior in high school, they handed out a questionnaire and they said, "Hey, let's start thinking about what we're going to do in our senior year of high school. Where would you guys like to go for a class trip?" And they actually handed out a questionnaire with questions like that. And people are putting down things like, I don't know, Disney World, whatever. And the guy sitting next to me, who's a goof off, put down the Jeep plant in Toledo. Ram 50 V8 says they also test aircraft windshields using a chicken cannon. That makes complete sense, too. You can imagine hitting a large bird with your windshield at like Mach 1. Johnny Knoxville says we could meet at Buddy's Pizza in downtown Detroit. The thing about it is, though, is that I'm hoping I can draw a bigger crowd than fill that place, because that place was small. But I met Johnny for Buddy's Pizza in Detroit at the original Buddy's Pizza. And the thing is that Buddy's is a well-known pizza place, and they've got branches, you know, all around. They got stores all around southeastern Michigan and probably elsewhere. It's really good pizza. It's one of my favorite pizza places there is. And Johnny goes, "I'm going to be in Detroit." And I go, "What are you doing there?" He goes, I'm looking to eat at Buddy's Pizza. And I'm like, "Dude, they're everywhere. I'll meet you at one." He goes, "I want to go to the original one. Ever been there?" I'm like, "No." So we went there. It's in an iffy part of town, but I mean, I'm sure when it was original, when they opened it, the town may not have been as iffy at that moment in time with respect to its immediate neighborhood. So there you go. Alexander Ganaka says it couldn't be East Chicago, doesn't exist. Well, that's like South Detroit, which is Windsor, Canada. Johnny Knoxville says, how about the Playboy Club in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin? They still have a Playboy Club? I think I heard that they do. Oh, boy. Boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. Roxanne, the Jeep plant? I don't even know if there was one or not. It was a funny concept, the Jeep plant in Toledo. But remember, this was a long time ago. Back during the war. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, Johnny Knoxville says they're credited with the originator of the Detroit style pizza. It's just, I don't know what, honest to gosh, I don't know what the cheese is, but the cheese on a Buddy's pizza is so good. And I had pizza yesterday, and there's 3 local pizzerias that are independents, that they're not affiliated with anybody. They're not Little Caesars, they're not Domino's. They're independents. There's 3 of them. And I order from them periodically, just different pizzas. Buddy's, which is a chain, has the best cheese. I don't know what kind of cheese. All I know is I'm eating on this cheese is so good. So good. And I specifically remember telling Johnny that they make the little 4 square. It's big enough for one person, but you won't be able to eat all 4 yourself. And you can't. But I go, you order what you like, I'll order what I like. And I remember I think I ate 3 of mine, he ate 2 of his. And I'm like, this stuff is so good. It's so good. But again, Buddy's Pizza. So that's not a paid endorsement. That's just me talking out loud. Witness back during the war was that the Cold War. I have a brother who's just old enough to have gotten a draft lottery number. And then that was the year they canceled the draft. And my brother, I forgot what the time frame was, but my brother, for a period of time, thought he was going to get drafted and go to Vietnam. And oh my, like I can't even fathom that. And then they canceled the draft. And I'm like, and I remember I was a little kid, not a little kid, but I was a kid. And I mean, it was just mind blowing. Florida Bart Fast wasn't the Willis Jeep plant in Toledo. I think it was. Brianna CC, where are Buddies? In and around southeastern Michigan, primarily in Detroit. But they're like, for instance, if you go to the you drive around Detroit, you'll just see them, and they're all over the place. I had one across the street from an office for the longest time, which meant I ate there a lot. But Johnny points out the crust is incredible also. The crust was incredible. It was. Ram 50 V8, did you see where Sam's Club is doing with membership cards? They want to use the app. What do you do if you've got a dumb phone? I don't know. I imagine they'd have to do some kind of thing if you want to use something, but I don't know. Ram 50 V8, how low was his number? I asked him once, I forgot. I'm not gonna. I don't want to. I'll ask him again and mention it later on down the line. John Michael Karma drafted to go to Canada. I've told the story before, but I'm going to tell it again. We used to drive the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which is a 500-mile drive basically from Detroit. And the big stretch of it is just driving up the Lower Peninsula and then across the Upper Peninsula. And there's a stretch of road they call the Seney stretch. And it goes from Shingleton at one end to Seney at the other. And if you keep going straight, it goes even further. It's one straight shot just all the way across. And we were coming back on vacation in the station wagon with 5 boys and my mom. And we see a hitchhiker. And this is, I don't know the year, 68 maybe, something like that. And there's a hitchhiker, long hair. And my mom slows down. We used to pick up hitchhikers. I felt so sorry for him. My mom would pick him up and start preaching to him. Make sure they were saved. And don't get me wrong, I'm not making fun of my mother's religion. I'm not making fun of anybody's religion here. I'm making fun of the situation where some guy's waiting for a ride and a family picks him up and he gets jammed into a station wagon with 5 kids and a mother. And we're just jabbering away, asking him questions about where he is, where he's from, where is he going. And my mom is asking him questions about his religious faith. And I'm convinced that 5 minutes later, he's almost asking if he can get out of the car, but he didn't. But I remember we asked him specifically, where are you going? Because we're going to Detroit. And he goes, no, I'm going across to Sault Ste. Marie, which is the border crossing into Canada. And when we dropped him off, because we had to turn the other direction, we dropped him off, and my mom's like, oh, what a nice young man. My brother goes, you know what he's doing, right? My mom's like, no, what? My mom was a little, she didn't think badly of anybody. unless she had a reason to. My brother goes, he's going to Canada because he probably wants to not get drafted. And we're all like, what? I was a little kid. I believed everything everyone told me. So Louis Browning says Buddy's original Detroit-style cheese pizza is topped with Wisconsin brick cheese. Is that a flavor? Wisconsin brick? That sounds more like an origin and a shape. I mean, is it, some kind of Swiss or mozzarella or something? Sam as I am says my draft number was 356. Immediately dropped my student deferment. If you're eligible for a year, you are then exempt for life. And for those who don't know, instead of just drafting kids when they turn to 18, every single year they'd have a draft lottery. And they would assign the dates of the year, all 365 of them, or 366. And they'd basically put them in a tumbler and draw them at random. And so they'd say the first number is March 3rd. The second number is November 12th. And they would put these things in order. And so if your number was, so when they started drafting people, they started at the ones that were drawn first and worked their way across. And depending on how many people they drafted in a given year, they would go either deeper or shallower into those numbers. So if you got a number in the 300s, you're probably not going to get drafted. You got a number in the double digits, you're probably getting drafted. Now you might say, but Steve, that's kind of odd then, right? Because that causes a bunch of problems. Well, it did, but it also did some other things. So if you got a really, really low draft number where you're going to get drafted, one thing you could do is you could quickly enlist and volunteer for another branch of service. So instead of being drafted into the Army, you could join the Marines, join the Air Force or something. And so a lot of people did that because they got low draft numbers. But there are also people who, I mean, can you imagine as you're drafting more and more people and they're getting closer and closer to your number and you're like, my brother had plans and he did go to college and then go work as an engineer in the automotive industry, which is what he did. That's what he wanted to do. And it would have put a big dent in his plans to take some time off and go off and fight in the war. He would have gone. He absolutely would have gone. Absolutely. But he would rather not have. So there you go. KLZ, happy Easter. And to you, my friend. Mike Lackner, go Navy. I remember talking to somebody back in the old days and asking, like people who volunteered to go to Vietnam, why would they do that? And they go, because they volunteered to get into a different service before they got drafted into the Army. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. D Wood missed the draft by a year. Whew. Ram 50 V8, dad's number was in the 350s. His best friend's was 12. His friend immediately joined the Coast Guard and got shipped to Vietnam. And so, you might say, but, you're still going to Vietnam. Yeah, but the odds of surviving, let's just say it, on a boat during Vietnam would be much better than being on the ground in Vietnam. And I have the utmost amount of respect for the people who fought over there. It was indescribable. Shauna, if you get drafted, how long do you serve for? I believe it's 2 years. I believe, but someone can correct me on that. It's been a little while since I looked at that. Gilbert Clement, I joined the Navy and was sent a letter that I'd not registered for the draft. Hey, that's the government for you. The armed services, remember, are just a branch of the government. And so I've heard so many stories about bureaucracy in the armed forces. Devin Bounce is 2 years. I thought it was 2 years. Matthew Shostrom says, I think my grandfather volunteered for the Army and ended up having some interactions with the tunnel rats. The exact connection is not overly clear. That said, he was so large too large that he could not be a rat himself. And of course, what we're talking about here is there were people in Vietnam on the other side would often dig tunnels. And of course, to make sure the tunnels were clear, somebody would go down and root them out. And extremely dangerous and extremely scary work. And yeah, I've heard so many stories out of Vietnam. I'm not talking about the movies, Platoon or Apocalypse. Now I'm talking about the actual stories from people who were there. And Shrek PMC says 2 years, yes. And it's the kind of stuff where makes it really easy when someone tells you they served to go, thank you for your service. The stuff that people had to put up with. It's not me 07 to say Stephen Crew. I would have been here earlier, but it was a late night. Yeah, CyberDocs is 2-year conscription. And I've had friends who just joined the military when there was no draft. And Johnny Knoxville says my Navy recruiter was a CB. Johnny C. Bradley, did you ever see Deer Hunter? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Don't get me going in that movie. There's so many different directions we can go off on, including Michael Cimino and how that movie basically got him a blank check on his next film or films. And shortly thereafter, he makes Heaven's Gate. So L. Grant Nelson, I missed the draft. They were winding things down in 72. Zach, what's the difference between an appellate court and the Supreme Court? Well, here's the thing. There's titles like the U.S. Supreme Court, or there's simply a reference to the highest court in the system, Michigan Supreme Court or the U.S. Supreme Court. But if I'm referring to a specific one, I'd capitalize it. Michigan Supreme Court would be capital. But if I said the Supreme Court of Ohio, I'm just referring to whatever the highest court is. You might say, what's the difference? Well, New York, for some odd reason, flipped theirs, and they refer to lower courts as Supreme Courts and their highest court as the appellate court. I'm not sure why. But appellate courts are simply courts that hear appeals. And so in Michigan, there's 2 levels of trial courts. There's a district court and the circuit court. And above them is the court of appeals. Yet, the circuit court hears appeals from the district court. So the circuit court can be an appellate court. And I've done that before. I had a case in the district court that I appealed to the circuit court. And the case caption will say, in the circuit court for the county of Oakland, and then on appeal from the district court. So they become an appellate court by function, but not by title. So I hope that helps. Johnny Knoxville says that having a military in your resume is a golden ticket in a lot of job markets. I can tell you right now that if somebody was talking to me and they said, oh, by the way, I served and was honorably discharged after so many years, I immediately have a different opinion of them because I know certain things about them. A total stranger walks up to me and just says, hi, I'm looking for a job. Without knowing anything else, I'm curious, can they do hard work? Can they listen to instructions? Can they accomplish a task? These are questions that are legitimate questions. Oh, you were in the Marines? Yes, 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 and yes on all those questions. And so that's a great point. And I know people who joined the military and also acquired skills in the military. And so you want to become a mechanic working in the hydraulics of aircraft. Guess what? Navy, Air Force, and a few other organizations might be willing to train you on that. And then when you leave and you've got those skills, you take the skills with you. So, Mark Miller, do you have a flow chart for appeals and Supreme Court breakdowns? Well, it depends on the state. And also depends on the system, because remember, there's federal courts and state courts. But in federal courts, it's always going to be there's a district court that does trials. And then there's the Court of Appeals that oversees a circuit. And then those go to the Supreme Court. But then there's also subdivisions, like bankruptcy court. 69 Coronet 500 says, my 7th grade teacher talked about he couldn't wear his uniform in the airport coming back from Vietnam because of protesters, which bothered him more than the war. There were a lot of stories about that. And one thing I was pleasantly surprised by was in later years that got changed to where now if you see someone wearing military garb in public, they're more likely to get thanked. And I heard so many stories about that back in the day. So Johnny Knoxville says my first real job after the Navy, $40,000 a year. Last year I was making 90. Credit to tech school and the Navy for sure. And I have another very good friend who was in the Navy, and he picked up some extremely good training in a very, very specialized field, which translates very, very well. Mike Lackner, my wife was a diesel mechanic in the Marines. I'm such a lucky old sailor. Dude, that's the greatest sentence I've read in a long time. My wife was a diesel mechanic in the Marines. I mean, I've known women who served in the Marines, and I've known women who know about vehicles. But being a diesel mechanic in the Marines, are you talking about they actually, trained her to do that? Was she working in like, big vehicles and stuff? Because again, that's a great skill set to have, but it's just cool. So, Barshman, what year were you born? You can extrapolate out some things about me, but I don't like to give. Do you want to know my mother's maiden name and or, the passwords to my bank account? Not just yet. Oh, Daniel Kester, the B-17 is a small plane if you consider how many would be in it with a crew of 11. I've flown on a B-17. I have a bunch of weird little things on my resume. Not things I should put on my resume, but things I can say that I've done. One of them is I got to fly on a B-17. The Yankee lady that was flying out of Ypsilanti. I got to fly on that a few years ago. I've also flown in a helicopter, and I've gone skydiving, but not all three at the same time. So, Kayla McComber says my dad happy birthday for me. And that's great. My father's still around. He turns 95 this year. Andrew Kruchowski says, I'm from Karachi, which almost rhymes when I said it that way. It's not me 07 says a couple friends of mine are in the Air Force. His wife is a captain and pilots helicopters. He's a sergeant and a logistics specialist. She outranks him at home. Wait. So one's an officer and one's not? Commissioned? I was under the impression that's I guess it depends on how they began fraternizing, I guess, right? Grande Taco. Matthew Shostrom, who do you think were bigger badasses, the tunnel rats or the SAS from World War II? If you think about what these people did in every battle, go back to guys living underground and then in trenches in World War I, and then going over the top, facing barbed wire and withering machine gun fire. War is horror. It's absolutely horror. And so, the fact that it exists is a problem. I'm not going to get all preachy on you here, but the people who do put on the uniform and serve our country deserve our utmost respect. So, but it's an interesting question. KC6NFV, why does the military have their own lawyers? Because they've got their own legal system. The Uniform Code of Military Justice, the UCMJ, and Uniform Military Justice. And so if you get in trouble in the military, it's bad news. But so if you commit a crime in the military, and it's not a civilian crime, but like you do something bad, you get tried in their system. So they still have due process. And so because it's a different system, they've got their own courts and they've got their own lawyers, and that'd be the Judge Advocate General or the JAG Corps. And it's a whole different thing. So if you've seen A Few Good Men, you know about that. But that's why. And it's because it's its own little universe. And there's nothing wrong with that. Can you imagine if somebody was accused of breaking some military rules and it was a crime, and they got to have a jury trial of civilians, you'd be like, what? What? Oh. Ram 50 V8 is the largest underground explosion non-nuclear took place in World War I. Are we talking about the time that the Allies tunneled underneath the German lines, and there's a big crater there now? I think I've heard about that. Austin on law and ethics. Have you ever been in a submarine at Pearl Harbor? No, but I've been on the U-505 in Chicago, which is a U-boat that's in the Science Museum there in Chicago. Very, very cool experience to see that and to understand what anybody went through in a submarine in World War II. And that was old school. The UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice. Kit Marlowe Scott, so you talking about the Halifax explosion? No, the Halifax explosion was when a couple boats collided in Halifax during World War I. That was, I believe, at the time, the world's largest explosion that was not natural in the sense. It wasn't an earthquake or a volcano explosion, which was ships loaded with explosive for munitions, and several of them went off. D. Wood, yeah, the Halifax ship channel explosion. I read a book about it a while back. So, Cyberdoc, thanks, Stephen, everyone, for being here today. Thanks, Canadian Robot Lady. Happy Easter to all. Yeah, Prince Albert says, don't forget there are even things that you can get in trouble for that you wouldn't get in trouble for as a civilian, like malingering or dereliction of duty. I'm surprised they don't have a sign at the post office. No loitering, no loafing, no malingering. So, Zach, you can't handle the truth. I have neither the time nor the inclination. And the Revenge of Fu Manchu, Word Up. I assume it's a reference to the song by Cameo. W-O-R-D. Up. So, anyway, that's going to wrap it for me. Canadian Robot Lady, thank you for being here. Have a great week. I myself will encourage you to go to my second channel and look up the video about Jay Leno if you haven't done so already. Otherwise, watch my main channel. I'll see you this week and again next weekend. Until then, behave yourself. Bye-bye.